Right, welcome to the Perimenopause Hub Anxiety Month. Today I'm talking to one of our experts, Debi Haden. Debi, do you want to tell us what you do?
I will indeed. Thank you for inviting me along today, Emily. I am a mindset coach, and one of the specialisms I have is around mental health. So anxiety, stress, depression, that kind of thing. I like to think of myself as a tour guide, taking people through like a journey in their mind to see how it's impacting on aspects of their life and what we might need to do to shift that in order to enable them to deal with things in a better way, really.
So we're looking at anxiety today.
Mm.
Obviously, you see a lot of clients who are living with anxiety, coping with anxiety, finding ways through it. How would you say it impacts on people's lives the most? What would you say would be the real difficult thing with experiencing anxiety?
I think the first thing is that people don't really understand their own anxiety, which makes it fearful. So they may be getting physical symptoms, which can be quite scary. That might be heart palpitations, sweaty palms, shortness of breath, that kind of thing. And that can feel quite scary in itself. But also from a mindset perspective, if people aren't really understanding the triggers to their anxiety, they'll feel quite overwhelmed with the situation. So for me, a lot of it is anxiety is around finding the things that you can control within your situations. And I know we're talking here about the current situation we're in, but I think the things I'm going to talk about today will be around any situation you find yourself in where anxiety is part of it.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at women going into perimenopause, obviously when you talk about the control thing, you suddenly have no control over your hormones or over what on earth is happening, and a lot of women are really knocked over by the anxiety that comes. How can they start to sort of claw back some control in that?
Okay, I'm going to show you a little exercise that I get my clients to do generally, and I think it's a good way of thinking about what's happening with hormones and body changes and everything else, because in life we only have a finite amount of energy, as you know, and at the moment particularly our energy, when we find ourselves in crisis, because one of the other things I've got 13 years of experience of international crisis, so I'm going to bring a little bit of that in to explain about anxiety as well. So when we find ourselves in a situation that is not usual for us, what can happen is it can drain our energy, because without even realizing it, you may not think you're anxious about the situation, but on an unconscious level, it might be draining you. So people are saying to me quite often, I feel more tired than normal, all of these kind of things. And the same when your hormones change, your energy levels will go very much up and down, and you'll wake up one morning and think, why do I feel so tired? Or why do I feel low today? And that in itself can make us feel anxious. So I will post this for you as well, Emily, so you can put it. But this is what I like to look at. Can you see that? It's a control. It's a control diagram, basically. And what I say to people is just draw 3 big circles on a piece of paper, okay, and look at the situation you find yourself in, okay. Now, if we're looking at hormones, for instance, and going into, pre-menopause, perimenopause, we can't necessarily change that situation, okay. So we would put that in that we have no control over that situation. But the other 2 circles, one will be the things we can control and the things we have influence over. Now, lots of people think, oh, I'm in this stage of my life, I have no control over it. That's not actually strictly true, is it? Because some we have no control over, other things we do. So our energy, we do have some control over. We can influence it by self-care. And particularly for women, We're not great at self-care, are we ever? No. So it's one aspect that we can influence. We can look after ourselves in the best possible way that we can. Okay. We can also have control over how we're feeling by being in the hub, for instance, and talking about how we're feeling, sharing that with other people and offloading. And that can help us emotionally as well in these circumstances.
Certainly
So
discovering we're not alone is huge, isn't it?
absolutely. And so with this exercise, what you start to do is you start to look at where you have control, where you have no control, and what you can influence. And where you start putting your energy is into the things that you can control and you can influence. Now, when I do this exercise with clients, what I tend to find is a lot of energy is going into those things we cannot change. So if you imagine, if you're putting all your energy into things you can't change at a time when your energy is already low, just getting out of bed of a morning can be difficult, can't it? Or thinking about going for a walk or whatever it is. So a lot of it is about taking control over the things that you can control and diverting your energy into that space. And anxiety will often come when we feel out of control.
Yeah. And I suppose it's timely to be talking about this with the world situation and all the rest. And I know purely personally, the week before the UK was put in lockdown, I felt like everything was out of my control. I found that a very difficult week, not knowing when I was going to be able to go to the shops. Was I going to be able to buy food for my chickens? Like really silly things were constantly vying for my attention. The first week that we've been in lockdown, I slept.
Yeah.
I hadn't realised how much energy that had taken.
Yep. Crisis will bring a whole raft of emotions, and I think people are saying sometimes, I don't know why I'm so weepy, I feel emotional today. So that is normal. I mean, I attended big crisis around the world, and it's a similar thing regardless of the situation. What crisis brings is almost a feeling of disorientation to begin with. And I think for the first few weeks, that's where we've all been. We've slept more, we've felt anxious, we've not been able to apply ourselves, because I know a lot of people said to me, oh, I thought with all this time I'd have a clean house by now, I would have done these courses. But actually, in the beginning, that won't happen. You don't have the focus, you don't have the energy, and often you've just got to roll with it until you find your new norm. Because this, we are all having to find a new norm here. We find ourselves in a very strange situation, so it takes time for us to find our bearings again, really. So I'd say don't beat yourself up if you think, oh my God, I should be doing this by now and I'm just sleeping. Just roll with it for now.
And actually, there are so many parallels, aren't there, in terms of the loss of control between the COVID-19 situation and the start of perimenopause, when you really don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
The parallels are actually worryingly similar, that you're suddenly overwhelmed with all this stuff that is different to what you always thought life would be. So, for example, previously you've always, let's say, had a completely regular period cycle. You know that you'll be a bit angry 2 days before, and otherwise you're fine. Good, lovely. Isn't that great? Suddenly that starts changing. Compare that to the current situation. You've always known that you can pop to the shop every day if you need to, and suddenly actually you really can't, because that's not responsible, that's not the right way to do it. All those lack of control cause so much unease, don't they?
Absolutely. And when we feel unease and we lose our bearings, we get fearful. And it doesn't matter who we are. I mean, I myself have had wobbles over this last few weeks, and I do what I do because it it takes us off our axis, if you know what I mean. And the world that we thought we lived in is quite different, and we don't know how the world's going to be as we come through it. But if we go to a space in our head which is what if, that will bring on massive anxiety. So I'm actually saying to people, just do day to day right now. Go with what you're waking up with each day to how you're feeling. And also things like be very careful, if you are somebody who generally struggles with anxiety, of tuning into too much noise that's going on out there. There's a lot of noise right now about what's going on in the world. And if you are somebody who is not sleeping well, I would really recommend that you stop doing that at about 6 o'clock and make the rest of your evening something that is much more relaxing, something that is much more you would enjoy doing normally. You know, we have to be careful we don't saturate ourselves with too much doom and gloom, really, because that will bring us down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, I don't know how it's being broadcast in different countries, obviously, but here in the UK, every afternoon from like 4:30, there's the BBC News update. For the first week or 10 days, I was glued to that.
Yeah,
because I needed to know what was coming. Now, nope, that's not in my life anymore.
Yeah. And there's a lot of misinformation, particularly on things like Facebook. And I know people have said that their input onto Facebook has gone up. People are spending a lot more time on Facebook. And I would say again, just be careful, because we know we can lose hours on Facebook sometimes. And it can be not helpful. I mean, some of the clients I've been speaking to, because one of the things that I get people to look at is when you feel anxiety coming on, have a look what you've been doing just before, or what's been going on just before. Because I think what happens these days is we've lost touch with how we think and how it connects to how we feel and then how we behave. So checking in with yourself through the day of how am I feeling, you know, and is that feeling connected to something I've been thinking? You know, when we start making those connections, be it the crisis we're in now, or you know, with the stage of life we're in with our hormones and everything, we can actually feel we can take back some of that control. So if we're feeling really tired and we think, well, I don't know why I'm feeling tired, actually when we look at it, there may be reasons why we've been feeling tired, because it might be that we've ignored what our body's actually telling us, which is rest.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just going to quickly say, if we were talking about this from the point of view of nutrition triggering hot flushes, you know, and we were asking people to keep a food diary of things that triggered physical perimenopause symptoms, this is only really the same, isn't it? It's just keeping a note of things that might just trigger that.
Yeah,
because again, it gives you control, doesn't it? It just puts it back into your control.
Absolutely. Everything we eat, everything we do as an activity, everything people say to us, everything we say to ourselves, we are our worst enemies in all of this. These are the things that will impact on our feelings and in turn our behaviours. So actually really understanding what we're thinking and how we're feeling is crucial in all of this. And I don't think there's been a better time actually than now to look at self-care, because for the majority of people, they will have more time on their hands, even if they're working from home, because we're not going out in the evenings and things like that. So actually thinking about how you're feeling and what you're thinking and putting self-care into place, if we can get those good habits in place now for when we come through this, then I think that will be a really good thing to actually work on.
As you said just now, we'll share the circles thing once we put this up. That would be really useful. But Thank you so much, Debbie. That's been brilliant.
My pleasure. Enjoyed it. Thank you. And good luck, everybody, with putting your self-care plan in place.